He waited in silence, staring out at the fading sun over the city skyline. For Jamie, this was the end of a long day filled with tension and uncertainty. His heart was heavy as he leaned against the cool metal railing of the bridge, the hum of traffic below fading into the background. He didn't know what to feel anymore, just this gnawing emptiness that had settled in his chest. Earlier that day, Jamie had received a cryptic message on his phone. It was from a number he didn't recognize. The message was short, yet it hit him like a brick wall. "I need to talk to you." There was no name, no context, just the weight of urgency behind those words. He thought of all the possibilities, letting his mind race from friend to foe. Who could it be? His thoughts drifted back to earlier in the week when things had begun to spiral. At the coffee shop, Jamie had an argument with his friend Mark. They had been close for years, part of each other's lives like puzzle pieces that fit perfectly. But lately tension had crept in, shadows lurking at the corners of their friendship. It started over something small, a joke blown out of proportion, a misunderstanding that ignited a flame. Now standing on the bridge, Jamie couldn't shake that feeling of regret. Mark's last words echoed in his mind. "You always think you know everything, but you're just guessing." Did Jamie really feel that way? He had spent so much time trying to be supportive, but in that moment all he could focus on was his own perspective. They had both hurt each other, but he couldn't help but feel cornered. Then, for the first time since their fight, Jamie's phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, breath hitching. It was another message from that unknown number. "I'm sorry for how things turned out." Nothing more, just a plea woven into a text. His heart raced. Who was this, and what did they want? Jamie felt a mix of trepidation and curiosity. He glanced around the bridge, the world moving in a blur while he stood frozen in place. Was this about Mark? Was he the one trying to reach out, not knowing how to mend things? Or was it someone else entirely? The uncertainty twisted in his stomach, making his thoughts spiral deeper into a state of worry. After a moment's deliberation, Jamie hit reply, typing back carefully. A simple question, but loaded with the weight of 1,000 thoughts. He sent it, watching the screen as if it held the answers to all his worries. Seconds felt like hours, then the reply came through and he held his breath, waiting. Suddenly, the world shifted. Jamie could hardly comprehend it. Mark. He had considered reaching out, but part of him was still defensive, still clinging to that anger. Why was Mark apologizing? The response was followed by another message. "Can we talk about what happened?" Those words hit Jamie like a tidal wave. He felt a rush of emotion, anger, regret, sadness, and a sliver of hope. Through all the noise, Jamie knew they needed to address the elephant in the room. But did he want to hear what Mark had to say? If there was one thing Jamie had always known, it was that conversations might lead to vulnerability. They could tear down walls or build them higher, but they were necessary. The silence between them had become a chasm filled with misunderstandings and unspoken feelings. Taking a deep breath, Jamie typed back, "Okay." He felt the tension begin to lift, as if a door was slowly cracking open. They agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where they had fought, a place once filled with laughter, memories, and warmth, now holding the weight of their unresolved anger. It was time to confront the ghosts of that conversation. As he made his way to the coffee shop, Jamie felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The building loomed ahead, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. He entered slowly, scanning for Mark. There he was, sitting at their usual spot, fingers nervously tapping on the table. The sight of his friend brought a rush of memories, the laughter, the late-night talks, the brotherhood they'd shared. But each memory was now tinged with the fallout of their anger. Jamie approached, heart pounding. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hey," Mark replied, looking up with a frown that quickly shifted to a tentative smile. They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Jamie watched as several emotions danced across Mark's face: regret, sadness, a hint of hope. It was clear he had been struggling with their fallout too, although neither of them had reached out until now. "Look," Mark began, voice low, "I'm sorry for what I said, I didn't mean it." Jamie felt a wave of understanding wash over him. For a moment they both looked down at their coffee mugs, avoiding each other's gaze. "I get it," Jamie replied quietly. "I was feeling overwhelmed too." There was a pause, the silence wrapping around them like an old, familiar blanket, but this time it didn't feel suffocating. It felt healing. "I just think we've both been so wrapped up in our own lives that we forgot why we became friends in the first place," Mark continued. Jamie raised his eyes, meeting Mark's gaze. "Yeah, it was like we didn't even try to see each other's side." Mark nodded, relief flooding his features. "I've missed you, man." There was something in Jamie's chest that began to untangle. The heaviness that had plagued him for days started to lift as their words intertwined, forming a bridge that would bring them back together. "I miss you too," Jamie admitted, and a smile finally broke across Mark's face, a fragile light breaking through clouds of doubt. Their conversation began to flow naturally, stories of their past, memories of laughter, and even the happier moments that had led to misunderstandings, weaving together a fabric of shared history. They began to address their hurts and reconcile the turmoil that had bubbled up between them, slowly bringing everything into the light. Hours slipped by unnoticed as they spoke, two friends forging a path back to trust. With every word exchanged, they chipped away at the darkness that had once threatened to pull them apart. was freeing, the way their laughter slowly returned, ironic in its sweetness against the backdrop of earlier arguments. As they finally reached the end of their conversation, Jamie felt lighter. The burdens that had shadowed their friendship started to dissolve like morning mist under the sun. Jamie asked, looking into Mark's eyes, seeing a flicker of hope mirrored there. "I think we just take it one day at a time," Mark replied, determination lacing his tone, "because what we have is worth keeping." Jamie chuckled softly. "And I promise to let you in." With that, they shared a laugh, the tightness in their chests finally breaking. As they stood to leave, Jamie felt a surge of gratitude. Their journey wasn't over, but this moment marked the beginning of a decision to step into the light rather than linger in the shadows. As they walked out of the coffee shop shoulder to shoulder, Jamie couldn't help but look back, remembering how silence had weighed heavily upon him just hours ago. Now they were moving forward, talking, listening, and learning how to be friends again. He hadn't just received a message, he had received a lifeline. And in that moment, Jamie realized that sometimes the hardest messages are the ones that lead to the strongest connections. He stood there in the dim light of the empty bar, the faded neon sign flickering outside, casting a ghostly glow through the window. Jake had expected to spend this Thursday night curled up at home with a good book, but something had pulled him out. He thought a drink might ease the emptiness that had settled around him this past month. Little did he know, this night would change everything. As the minutes trickled by, he nursed his drink, watching a few patrons talk over hushed tones at the other end of the bar, but the weight of silence pressed down on him. It was like the walls were closing in, reminders of unspoken words lingering like ghosts in the air. The tension smoldered in his chest, building into something uncomfortable. He felt adrift, lost in a sea of memories that churned below the surface, pulling him down deeper. Just then his phone buzzed against the bar. Jake glanced down, surprised to see a message from an unknown number. His heart raced. Could it be someone from his past, a friend trying to reconnect? He hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. "I got your number from the owner," the message read. Jake's mind spiraled. The owner, Howard. The last time they had spoken, Jake had stormed out in anger, hurling accusations that felt both justified and cruel. How could Howard even consider apologizing after all that had unfolded? Their argument had been explosive, fueled by the pressures of a struggling business and misunderstandings that had swelled beyond control. Images of the bar's peeling walls and the cries of laughter that once echoed through it flashed before him. But even more vividly, he saw the hurt in Howard's eyes, the betrayal that had passed between them. Jake's heart twisted with uncertainty. What could this message mean? Did Howard really want to patch things up, or was this some half-hearted attempt to save face? He took a deep breath. The familiar grit of nerves knotting in his stomach made him hesitate. The silence felt heavy, demanding an answer. Should he ignore it or reach out? The minutes stretched long as he mulled it over, thoughts colliding like thunderclouds. Jake had spent years building that friendship with Howard. They'd gone through highs and lows, shared countless late nights wrapped in conversation, laughter ringing out like music. But somewhere along the line, everything had changed. As Jake sipped his drink, bitterness rose at the memory Howard's refusal to listen, his stubbornness that had fueled the fire of their argument. Finally, curiosity overtook him. He typed back cautiously, "What do you mean?" A moment later, the reply came, "He regrets how things ended." The stakes suddenly felt higher. This was no simple text. It was an invitation to bridge a chasm that had grown between them. Could they truly mend the bond that they once thought was unbreakable? Jake felt a flicker of hope mixed with apprehension. Could old friends find their way back, even after such a fierce fallout? Glancing at the clock, he realized it was late, but the thought of waiting until tomorrow gnawed at him. He hesitated, then typed, "Okay." The response was swift. Sleep was elusive that night. Images of their last fight rolled through his mind like a movie playing on repeat, the anger, the accusations, the deep disappointment in each other's eyes. As he lay in bed, he revisited every moment, every harsh word. Did they really stand a chance at reconnection? The next evening, Jake found himself pacing in front of the bar, the weight of the decision he'd made beginning to settle into his bones. He felt as if he were standing on the edge of some vast cliff, unsure if jumping would lead to freedom or disaster. Would Howard really have changed? Was it safe to hope? When he finally stepped inside, the air hummed with an unexpected energy, a mixture of anticipation and tension. There was Howard sitting at their usual table, fingers drumming nervously on the wood, the light catching his dark hair, turning it a glossy brown. He looked older, wearier, as if the weight of the last few months had etched deeper lines on his face. "Hey," Jake said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Hey," Howard replied, his eyes flickering, full of uncertainty. The silence that followed felt charged, wrapping around them like fog. Jake took a seat slowly, the familiar smell of ale and wood filling the air. His heart raced. It felt strange, sitting there, both familiar and foreign at the same time. "I got your message," Jake started, trying to break the ice. "You?" Howard took a deep breath, his expression shifting from apprehension to something more vulnerable. "Yeah, I do. I didn't do right by you, Jake. I let my pride get in the way." For a moment, Jake felt a lump form in his throat. He had expected defensiveness, but this was different. This was an admission of fault, a willingness to own up to past mistakes, and it surprised him. "I get it," Jake replied carefully, "but you didn't just hurt me, you hurt yourself in the process." Howard nodded, guilt shadowing his features. "I was too wrapped up in trying to make things work, trying to save the bar from going under." Hurt collided with understanding inside Jake's chest. He could feel the pain of Howard's struggles. It had been a tough time, and he too had felt the unsettling waves of uncertainty. Still, they had let their relationship slip into destruction like an abandoned ship lost at sea. Jake asked, searching Howard's eyes. "I realized I was losing everything that actually mattered," Howard said, his voice thick with emotion. "The bar is just a place, it's the people that make it special." Jake's heart raced as he listened, the layers of tension beginning to unravel. They were both at fault, still holding tight to their pride while pushing one another away. Perhaps they could still navigate the storm together. "I've missed this place," Jake admitted, glancing around. It felt odd saying the last part. He had buried those feelings to protect himself, but now that they were out in the open, they felt freeing. Howard swallowed hard, his gaze sharp. "I've missed you too, man. You have no idea how lonely it has been without our talks, our laughter." As they each broke through the barriers they'd built, their stories poured out, a release of held-back feelings. They spoke of shared dreams, of promises made in times of hope. They touched on their failures, but also recognized the growth that had come from the pain. With each word spoken, the air around them felt lighter, almost as if the bar itself had been holding its breath. Time blurred as they remembered the laughter of their creative ideas for the bar, the fun they'd had planning community events, and the late-night discussions that had given them energy. They forged a connection again, weaving together the remnants of their lost friendship and discovering how much they still cared for each other beneath the surface. After hours of conversation, with laughter spilling into the night and genuine smiles breaking across their faces, Howard leaned back against the chair, a thoughtful expression washing over him. He asked, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. "I think so," Jake replied, his conviction growing stronger. "It's going to take time, and we need to remember how to communicate, but if we really want this to work, we can." There was silence for a moment, the kind that carried hope, and then Howard nodded, a smile breaking through the weariness. "I want to try. The bar is part of us, but it shouldn't define us." As the night wore on, Jake felt the darkness lifting. The future was uncertain, but this moment gave him hope. They weren't what they once were, but they could become something stronger if they were patient. The message from the owner hadn't just been about an apology. It had opened a door they both thought was closed for good. With the quiet clinking of glasses around them, Jake realized they were forging a new path. It wouldn't be easy. Navigating the emotions of a fractured friendship would take work. But as they clinked their glasses together, a toast to a fresh start, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. Jake knew in his heart that this was the beginning of something valuable, a chance to rebuild what had been lost, to create something better than before. In that dimly lit bar, as laughter echoed through the night, the journey of forgiveness began, painting a new chapter filled with strength and resilience. He sat alone on the edge of the empty bench, a chill in the air that made his breath visible like a ghost. Lucas stared at the cracked pavement beneath his feet, memories swirling as he wrestled with the silence that engulfed him. Days turned into weeks since that last fateful conversation with the owner of the local cafe, and regret weighed heavily on his shoulders like a dark cloud. He never thought it could end like this. His mind drifted back to the moment when everything went wrong. They had been friends for years, and the cafe was their shared haven, a sanctuary filled with laughter, aromas of fresh coffee, and the warmth of friendship. But when the financial troubles hit hard, tension seeped in like an unwelcome winter breeze. In the heat of the moment, words were thrown like daggers, sharp and cruel. Lucas had been hurt, angry, and feeling betrayed, and in a whirlwind of emotions, he stormed out, leaving a friendship in tatters. Days passed in silence. Lucas had wanted to reach out to mend things, but pride held him back. He replayed the confrontation in his mind. "You don't get it." The response had been searing, a crack in their bond that seemed too wide to bridge. Lucas had said things he couldn't take back, and he knew it. Just as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of deep orange and lavender, his phone buzzed violently against the wood of the bench. He picked it up, heart racing. A message from an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. His breath caught in his throat. "Hey, it's Sam. I talked to the owner." The words hit him like a tidal wave. Sam, his old friend and the cafe's barista. His hands trembled slightly as he scanned the message again. Lucas had never expected that the owner, Paul, would reach out after everything. "He wants to meet," the text continued. Could this be real, a chance to talk, to mend what had been broken? Part of him felt a flicker of hope intermingled with fear. Would Paul be ready to face the consequences of their fight? Would he accept Lucas's apology in return? Could they find a way back? The memories of laughter and camaraderie tugged at him, battling against the anger and hurt. He took a deep breath, fingers hovering over the keyboard. His heart pounded as he typed back, "Where?" A new message appeared almost instantly. "Tomorrow at the cafe." The night wore on, questions swirling in his mind like autumn leaves caught in a storm. What would he say? How could he express the tangled web of feelings he carried? He wrestled with doubt, wondering if meeting would only deepen the wounds. Still, a part of him couldn't shake the thought of reconciliation. Perhaps it could be the first step toward healing. As the next afternoon approached, Lucas felt his nerves twist like a coiled spring. Each step toward the cafe was laden with memories both sweet and sour. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, a familiar sound that sent a blend of warmth and anxiety through him. The place felt different, more alive somehow, yet tinged with the weight of what had happened. There was Paul, seated at their usual table, fingers drumming nervously against the wood. Lucas had imagined this moment countless times, yet nothing could prepare him for the real thing. Paul looked up, his face a mix of uncertainty and regret, the light catching the deep lines around his eyes. "Lucas," he said softly, almost like he was afraid to speak too loud. "Hey," Lucas replied, his voice steadier than he felt. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. He sat down slowly, the weight of so many emotions flooding back. "I didn't think you'd come," Paul finally said, his gaze locked on the table, avoiding eye contact. Lucas felt a rush of empathy. He could see the turmoil etched across Paul's features. "I didn't know what to expect either. I've been thinking a lot." "I've been doing the same," Paul replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for how I handled things. I was stressed and I let it get the best of me." Lucas nodded, swallowing hard. "I should have reached out too. I let pride take over." Those words hung in the air between them, heavy but necessary. For a moment they both sat in silence, reflecting on the storm of emotions that had led them here. It was a strange comfort to know that they were both navigating this uncertainty together. Paul asked suddenly, a smile creeping onto his face. "Of course, we were so clueless, but it felt right," Lucas chuckled, the warmth of nostalgic memories washing over him. "Yes," Paul laughed softly, the tension in the room starting to dissipate. It became so much more than that. In that moment, Lucas felt a bond forming anew, built on shared memories and the realization that they had both been hurting. Most importantly, they had both missed each other. He searched Paul's eyes, filled with a mix of emotion, sadness, hope, regret. "I don't want to lose that." Paul nodded slowly, the sincerity in his gaze unwavering. "Me too, Lucas. I miss it all, but I know it won't happen overnight." The vulnerability in Paul's voice brought a swell of emotion to Lucas' chest. They were both acknowledging the past and the hurt, but more importantly, they were acknowledging the possibility of a future together. "I'm scared, Paul," Lucas admitted, his voice unsteady. "I'm afraid we'll just end up right back where we started, the anger, the frustration." "I'm scared too," Paul confessed, "but I think it starts with honesty, no more letting pride get in the way." Lucas took a deep breath, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. The more they talked, the more he felt that they could rebuild what had been lost. He asked, curiosity flickering in his heart. Paul leaned forward, determination in his voice. "Let's take it day by day. We'll figure things out together. We can start with small changes here at the cafe, maybe bring in events to draw the community back in, and we can talk whenever things start to feel heavy again." Lucas felt a spark of enthusiasm ignite within him. This was the passion they had once shared, the lifeline to reignite their friendship. "I have some ideas for events, live music nights, open mic." Paul's eyes brightened, and a genuine smile broke through the burden he had carried. "Yes, that's exactly what we need. We have to remember why we started this in the first place." And they began to dream together again, hands waving excitedly as they bounced ideas off each other. The laughter came easier now, and for the first time in months, the atmosphere felt buoyant. They mapped out plans, sketching titles and ideas on napkins, as excitement bubbled within the cafe. Hours slipped away as they reconstructed the foundation of what had once been lost. They exchanged thoughts on challenges they could face, hopes and dreams intertwined, acknowledging their fears while focusing on the path ahead. As they finally leaned back, realization hit them both. They had walked through the door of uncertainty hand in hand and emerged on the other side wounded but stronger. Lucas felt the darkness receding, replaced by the warmth of friendship and the thrill of possibility. "I never thought we could get back here," he admitted, sincerity etched in his voice. "Neither did I," Paul chuckled, shaking his head, "but maybe that's the magic of it all." As they settled the bill, Lucas felt something had shifted within him. The sense of dread that had followed him for weeks had lifted, replaced by resolve. They were ready to step into the future together, rebuilding a monument not just to their past, but to their growth. On his way out, the bell jingled brightly above the door, bringing with it a rush of warmth. They had turned a corner, made a decision together. It wouldn't be easy, but together they would navigate the challenges ahead. Lucas walked down the street, heart lighter, feeling the weight of uncertainty fade away. He knew there would still be rough patches, but they had taken the first step. The messages, the worries, the silences, they had all led to this moment, and as he glanced back one last time at the cafe, he couldn't help but smile. They had turned the tide, they were ready to start anew. He slammed the door behind him with a force that echoed through the empty halls of the cafe, the door's bell jingling a frantic farewell. It was an unexpected moment, one that shattered everything they had built over the years. There they stood, Jacob, the barista, and Sam, the owner staring at each other with raw emotions swirling in the space between them. Words had been exchanged, hurtful words that felt like knives cutting deeper with every breath they took. Jacob didn't just walk out, he stormed out. The arguments had been escalating for months, bottled emotions that finally erupted like a volcano. Jacob felt unappreciated, and Sam felt the pressure of keeping the cafe alive in a struggling economy. Every complaint about the coffee, every late delivery, every patron that left unsatisfied set off small sparks in their friendship. And then, like a match to kindling, it all ignited in a war of words. Jacob had shouted, fists clenched, heart pounding. Sam had recoiled as if struck, eyes flashing with hurt and chaos. "You think this is easy for me?" That was the moment everything cracked. Fire and fury had taken the place of laughter and camaraderie, turning the cafe from a warm gathering spot into a battlefield. Jacob stormed away, unsure if he'd ever return. Each footstep away from that door felt like a step toward loneliness. Days turned into weeks, but the silence didn't grow more comfortable, it festered. Jacob debated texting Sam, but what could he say? Apologies felt hollow after such heated exchanges. Instead, he filled his evenings with distractions, a book here, a movie there, but nothing could drown out the hesitation that curled in his chest. Their shared jokes and memories played in vivid color, a slideshow of happiness mixed with ash and regret. Then one afternoon, while Jacob was scrolling aimlessly through his phone, he saw a notification pop up. It was a message from Sam. For a moment, time stood still. He felt a flicker of hope intertwined with fear. 1,000 questions raced through his mind. What did he want? Could this be an apology? He hesitated for a moment, his thumb hovering over the screen before finally tapping it open. "Hey Jacob, I know things got out of hand between us. I've thought a lot about it and I'd like to apologize." A mix of relief and trepidation washed over him. The words "I'd like to apologize" felt like a fierce balm applied on a deep wound, yet doubts still clawed at him. Would this meeting open old wounds, or could it be a step toward healing? He quickly typed a response, "Sure." Sam responded almost immediately. "How about tomorrow afternoon at the cafe?" Jacob felt the flutter of fear mixed with excitement. The cafe, his second home, he sighed, considering the weight of the past with the possibility of forgiveness. "I'll be there," he typed back. The next day felt like an eternity. Time crept slowly as he tried to focus on anything other than the impending meeting. He mentally rehearsed what he might say. Should he apologize first, or should he wait for Sam to initiate? The possibilities danced in his mind, filling him with anxiety as the clock ticked down. As 3 p.m. approached, Jacob stood in front of the cafe, breath fogging in the crisp air. He couldn't help but feel the nostalgia tugging at his heartstrings. The faded green awning, the cozy seating arrangements outside, all of it flooded back memories of warmth and laughter, conversations shared over steaming mugs. But now it felt different, heavy. Pushing the door open, the familiar bell chimed a bittersweet greeting. There was Sam, sitting at their usual table, fingers fidgeting nervously. His demeanor was different. The confident owner was replaced with someone who looked almost small, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Hey," Jacob said cautiously, taking a seat. "Hey," Sam replied, his voice low, eyes darting to the floor. There was a moment of palpable silence, thick with emotion. They both knew what hung in the air hurt, anger, but most importantly, a curiosity as to whether they could mend things. Jacob broke the silence. "I've thought about our last conversation a lot." Sam nodded. He looked up for a moment, his vulnerability on display. "I wish I could take back my anger, too. I shouldn't have let everything get to me." Jacob felt a flicker of understanding. The cafe was more than just a job. It was their shared dream, a symbol of all the hard work they had put into building something meaningful. "We both made mistakes," Jacob admitted quietly, "but I want us to heal." Sam looked him in the eye, the sincerity there illuminating the shadows that lingered between them. "I don't want to lose you either. I've been an idiot." As they spoke, the tension began to dissolve. There was something undeniably raw yet beautiful about confronting their fears together. It was in moments like these that relationship dynamics could shift, revealing deeper truths. Jacob said, relief washing over him, "Our late-night brainstorming sessions over coffee." Sam smiled wistfully, a spark of nostalgia lighting up his eyes. "Yeah, it was like we were unstoppable together. We made this cafe thrive because we cared." With each word exchanged, vulnerability wove itself into a new tapestry of understanding. It was clear they needed each other, but more importantly, they needed to communicate better. They couldn't let external pressures construct barriers again. Jacob leaned in. "How about we come up with a plan together, a new direction for the cafe?" Sam's eyes lit up like flares signaling a new beginning. "I love that idea. Let's brainstorm some fresh ideas that can draw people back in. We could throw open mic nights, community art showcases." Jacob responded, his enthusiasm blooming within him. "And we could revamp the menu, bring in some local products, play with seasonal ingredients." They dove into a whirlwind of ideas, brainstorming sessions pouring out with such energy that the weight of their earlier confrontation seemed distant, almost a backdrop to the vibrant scene unfolding before them. They remembered their shared dreams, the laughter they had once shared flowing back like a familiar melody. They spent hours talking, sketching out plans and fine-tuning ideas. They debated the rebranding of the cafe, ran through marketing strategies, and even laughed about the things that had once irked them. Finally, as the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting golden beams through the windows, they paused. Jacob felt a warmth spreading through him, not just from the ideas, but from the rekindled friendship. "I can't believe we let things go so far apart," he said, reflecting on the journey that had led them back to this moment. "Me neither," Sam replied, chuckling softly. "But in a way, I think it helped us see how much we value this place and each other." With that, they shared a genuine laugh, a sound that filled the cafe with its warmth, a bittersweet echo of laughter that only true friends share. It was a moment that reminded them everything was possible if they chose to face it together. Leaving the cafe that day, Jacob felt as if he were stepping out into a new realm of possibility. A buzzing energy coursed through him, and he wasn't just floating back, he was moving forward. They knew the work ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges in rebuilding what they once had, but their hearts pointed toward a shared purpose. As the weeks unfolded, Jacob and Sam put their plans into action. They transformed the cafe, infusing it with fresh life. The open mic nights turned into a vibrant celebration of local talents, and art from local artists filled the walls as they created a gallery space. With each event, each shared idea, the cafe began to pulse with new energy, rekindling connections that had long been dormant. Their friendship deepened with every passing day. They leaned on each other through the challenges of running a business, celebrating victories together, and finding solace in their shared struggles. They no longer stepped on eggshells around each other. Instead, they communicated openly, facing issues head-on rather than letting resentment fester. One evening, while they were wrapping up after another lively open mic night, Jacob looked around the cafe, filled with laughter and conversations. He turned to Sam, a smile spreading across his face. Sam looked around, his eyes mirroring the joy in Jacob's heart. "It's incredible. I would have never guessed we'd bounce back from the edge like this." "So true," Jacob replied, clapping him on the back. Their bond had transformed, not in spite of the conflict, but because of it, a testament to the power of facing adversity together. They had realized that silence might offer a momentary escape from pain, but it was through confrontation and vulnerability that real connection flourished. As they closed up for the night, Jacob took a moment to reflect. The journey had been long, filled with heartache, but it had led him back to something beautiful. He understood now that every relationship has its storms, but how they navigated those tempests determined their future. As they stepped out into the night, a sense of calm wrapped around them. Together, they were no longer confined by the silence that had once fractured them, but liberated by the words that had rebuilt their friendship, stronger than before. In the stillness of the evening, they stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to face whatever came next. He stared at the reflection in the coffee shop's window, watching the way the light bounced off his unshaven face, casting shadows of doubt in his mind. This was not where he thought he would be, waiting in silence, battling feelings of regret. Just a few weeks ago, he had been the life of the party, the guy who could charm anyone with a smile. Now he felt lost, trapped in a world that seemed to have forgotten him. It all unraveled with one heated conversation. Max had always been passionate, especially about his work at the cafe he'd helped build from the ground up. But when the new owner, Greg, took over, everything changed. The cafe's atmosphere shifted from warm and welcoming to stiff and businesslike. Greg seemed more interested in profits than people, and that drove a wedge between them. Arguments erupted, fueled by misunderstandings and unspoken truths. Greg had shouted one evening, frustration flaring in his eyes. Max had felt his blood boil, a wave of anger crashing over him. "I care about this place." He had never intended to raise his voice, but the words felt justified at the moment. After that, things turned sour. The cafe lost some of its usual joy, entering a bleak phase that shook both of them. Patrons drifted away, and the vibrant conversations that used to ring through the walls turned into awkward silences. They were caught in a cycle of resentment, both unwilling to reach out first. Days turned into weeks, with silence settling like a heavy fog. Then, out of nowhere, a message appeared on Max's phone. He had been sitting alone at home, the eerie quiet weighing on him when the notification chimed. "Hey Max, it's Greg. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Can we talk?" His heart raced. An apology? Max couldn't believe it. He read the message again, and disbelief washed over him. Had Greg really reflected on what had happened? The urge to respond quickly surged through him, but doubt crept in. Should he ignore it? What if it was just an empty gesture? The minutes ticked by slowly as he toyed with his phone, anxiety buzzing in his veins. The weight of their last encounter hung in the air like a storm cloud, but a flicker of hope ignited within him, a small voice urging him to reply. Taking a deep breath, he typed back, "Sure." A response came quickly. "Tomorrow at the cafe, same time as before." Max couldn't sleep that night. His mind raced through every possible scenario. What would Greg say? Would it be genuine? Would they have a chance to mend things, or would it all fall apart again? Just when he thought that he might find peace and sleep, worries spiraled out of control. The next afternoon felt heavy with anticipation. Every second stretched out as he walked to the cafe, his heart pounding against his ribcage. Memories of the once vibrant place flooded his mind, the laughter, the aroma of coffee, the genuine conversations. Today, those memories felt bittersweet, coated with fear and uncertainty. As he stepped through the door, the bell jingled, a familiar sound that hung in the air like a haunting melody. Greg was already seated at the back table, fingers steepled in front of his face, clearly deep in thought. As their eyes met, an electric tension crackled between them, a mix of hope and apprehension. "Hey," Max managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "Hey," Greg replied, his tone carrying the weight of unspoken words. It was as if they were standing on a tightrope, uncertain about how to navigate the delicate balance between confrontation and reconciliation. Max took a seat, the silence stretching uncomfortably. He watched as the steam from Greg's coffee curled upward, filling the space with warmth. It felt like an invitation, a reminder of how things used to be. Finally, Greg broke the stillness. "Thanks for coming. I know things have been complicated doesn't even begin to cover it," Max replied, his voice edged with honesty. The truth had to come out. They couldn't mask their pain any longer. "I regret how things unfolded," Greg admitted, his voice low. "I got so caught up in my vision for the cafe that I lost sight of the people who matter." Max felt a swell of emotions welling up inside him, a mixture of relief and lingering hurt. "It hurt, you know," Greg nodded, the guilt evident in his eyes. "I know. I was focused on the bottom line, and I pushed you away when I should have listened." As they spoke, the atmosphere began to shift. Vulnerability replaced hostility, and in that moment, Max realized it was okay to not have everything figured out. They were both flawed, both making mistakes in a situation that had spiraled out of control. "I missed our conversations," Max confessed, the weight of his confession dissolving the tension. "The laughter, the brainstorming. I missed that too," Greg said. "I've realized that I need a team to make this work, not just a name to put on the door." Max took a deep breath. This was the moment he had hoped for. They had the chance to rebuild not just a cafe, but a friendship. "Let's bring it back," he said, his voice steady. "We can brainstorm ideas together, figure out what works." Greg's eyes sparkled with a hint of hope. "I'd like that." The warmth spread between them, igniting a flicker of enthusiasm that had long been extinguished. They spent the next couple of hours talking, a harmonic rhythm emerging as old memories wove into new dreams. Greg shared his ideas, and Max brought his own, bouncing proposals back and forth like a game of catch. They rekindled that spark of collaboration that had once defined their connection, allowing the energy of possibility to fill the air. "We could host community nights," Max suggested excitedly. "Absolutely, and what if we brought fresh local ingredients into our menu?" Greg's enthusiasm mirrored Max's. The hours passed without notice, laughter filling the cafe, bearing witness to their renewed partnership. They discussed how they could revamp the space, the joy of working side by side returning like an old friend. Max couldn't believe how easy it had become to share ideas again, how the hurdles of their past slowly disappeared with each shared vision. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Max leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of accomplishment rising within him. "I never thought we'd get here," he said softly, gratitude pouring from his heart. "Life works in mysterious ways." "Maybe we had to hit rock bottom to see what really mattered," Greg replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. They shared a moment of understanding, aware that the journey ahead would still hold challenges, but this time they would face them together. They had learned from the silence that had once alienated them, and they were ready to navigate the path of friendship and partnership with open hearts. "It's good to be back," Max said, his voice filled with warmth. "Agreed," Greg replied, his smile widening. Their friendship had weathered a storm, emerged from it stronger, and finally turned a page toward a new chapter. As they wrapped up, the cafe buzzed with energy once more. Patrons came in, sipping coffee and laughing in the lively atmosphere they had cultivated through effort and understanding. Max felt the weight of uncertainty finally lifting, replaced by the exhilarating flow of friendship. Leaving the cafe that day, Max felt free. The silence he had waited in was no longer a barrier, but a space for reflection and growth. He understood now that it didn't matter how rocky the road had been. What mattered was the willingness to confront the past and strive for a brighter future. The next chapter awaited them, filled with possibility, laughter, and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would face whatever came next. Together, they would keep the cafe alive, and together, they would cherish the lessons learned from the silence that had almost torn them apart. And as they walked toward the future, side by side, hope filled the air, and the promise of new beginnings ignited the spark that had always defined them. He sat alone on a weathered park bench, the chilly air wrapping around him like a thick blanket of regret. Connor stared at the deserted playground in front of him, memories flooding back from a time when laughter echoed through the swings and slides. But today, the silence was deafening, and so was the weight on his heart. Just a week ago, he had received a message that would change everything, a text from Sarah, the owner of the quaint little bookstore where he had worked part-time for years. The last time they had spoken, things had been explosive. They had been caught in a quarrel that erupted during a busy Saturday afternoon, a day that should have been cheerful, filled with customers and sales. Instead, it turned into a battleground. Sarah had said, her voice tense with frustration. He had felt the heat rise in his cheeks, anger flaring up like a violent storm. That had been the last straw. Connor had stormed out of the store, slamming the door behind him. He thought he was standing up for himself, but it only left him feeling hollow. The bookstore was more than just a job. It was a sanctuary where he had connected with stories and people. Now it felt steeped in tension, marred by the fallout of their argument. The silence that followed their fight felt like an abyss. Days turned into a blur of missed shifts and unanswered calls. Connor thought of reaching out but felt paralyzed by the fear of rejection. Had he ruined everything? Did Sarah even want to hear from him again? Then came the message, a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea of his thoughts. "Hey Connor, I've been thinking, can we talk?" A flicker of hope ignited deep within him, battling against the shadows of doubt. Did this mean she wanted to make things right? Could they possibly return to the camaraderie they once shared? But hesitation gripped him as he realized the weight of the moment. How could he face her after everything that had happened? After moments of internal debate, Connor typed back hesitantly, "Sure." Reply was quick, "How about tomorrow afternoon at the bookstore?" The next day rolled around as if taunting him, each tick of the clock echoing in his mind. He felt a mix of excitement and dread as he approached the cozy little bookstore. The familiar scent of books permeated the air, but so did an awkward tension that seemed to cling to the walls. Could this place, once a source of joy, be the setting for reconciliation? As he pushed the door open, the soft chime of the bell rang out, breaking the stillness. Sarah sat at the back, her posture rigid, a nervous energy humming around her. The moment their eyes met, Connor felt that familiar knot in his stomach, a blend of anxiety and hope. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hey," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked down at her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact as if the weight of their past loomed large between them. Silence filled the air, heavy and thick, like it had for the past few days. Connor's heart raced as he searched for the right words. Finally, he broke the stillness. "Thanks for inviting me. I didn't know if you wanted to see me again after." Sarah nodded, her eyes still focused on her coffee. "I've been thinking a lot since that day. I feel awful about how I handled everything." Hearing her admit it brought a brief wave of relief. "I felt blindsided. I wish I could have expressed my side better too. It's just that." At last, she lifted her gaze, their eyes locking in a shared moment of vulnerability. "I don't want to lose you or the bookstore," she admitted. Connor felt his heart swell. It was easy to forget how much he cared when there had been so much anger. "Can we talk about what happened?" For the first time, the tension began to unravel. They exchanged stories, opening up about their frustrations, fears, and the pressures they had both felt. Sarah explained the stress of running the store, how a flood of bills and underwhelming sales had pushed her to the brink. Connor shared his struggles with balancing work, school, and his growing need for independence as he transitioned into adulthood. "Sometimes I felt like you didn't take this job seriously," Sarah confessed. "I get that," Connor replied, a sense of understanding blooming between them. "It wasn't that I didn't care, I was overwhelmed." As they continued conversing, layers of misunderstanding peeled away, revealing a deeper connection. They laughed, shared stories about their favorite customers, reminiscing about book signings and community events that once inspired so much joy. "I remember the first book fair we hosted," Connor said, a glint of nostalgia in his eyes. "We thought nobody would show up, and then the whole town turned out. The energy in this place that day was electric." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting warmth. Time seemed to flow differently as they spoke, the clock ticking away unnoticed. With each story they shared, feelings of regret transformed into hope and determination. Together, they began to envision how they could bring that same energy back to the cafe. Connor suggested a chance for locals to share their stories, maybe have an open mic for poetry readings. Sarah leaned forward, excitement flickering in her eyes. "That's a fantastic idea. We could bring in local authors, connecting the community to new voices." As they brainstormed ideas, a palpable energy filled the room, something that had been missing for far too long. Connor felt his heart lighten. The weight of their earlier confrontation had morphed into a shared vision of revival. They stayed far longer than either had planned, enveloped in a world they both cherished. The cozy bookstore, once a fractured setting, now felt alive again, bursting with possibility. As they began to wrap up their conversation, Connor felt a deep sense of gratitude filling him. "Thank you for this, Sarah, for reaching out for the coffee and just for being willing to talk," he said, sincerity echoing in his voice. "I needed this too," she replied softly. "I've learned that honest conversation is essential, especially when things get tough." In that moment, Connor realized how easy it was to create distance when he could have opened up. They had both made mistakes, but now, sitting in the lively bookstore together, they had taken steps toward healing. With the evening sun painting the sky in hues of gold and purple, they both stood, ready to leave the past behind and enter a new chapter. As they walked to the door together, an air of possibility surrounded them. They would rebuild not just the bookstore, but their friendship side by side. As Connor stepped into the fresh air, he felt a transformation unfold within him, a flicker of hope turning into a blazing flame. The silence that had once threatened to engulf him had given way to understanding and friendship. He understood now that challenges could become stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. He looked back at Sarah, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Let's do this together." Sarah smiled, a spark of determination illuminating her face. And as they walked away, the world felt vibrant again. The future stood before them, filled with opportunity and growth, like an unwritten chapter ready to be painted with their shared stories and dreams. In the silence, they had found peace, and from that silence, a new beginning emerged, better, deeper, and stronger than ever before. He waited in silence, the sound of the clock ticking echoing in the otherwise quiet room. Alex sat at the edge of his bed, heart racing as he stared at his phone. The screen remained dark, a constant reminder of the silence between him and the cafe owner, Mia. Just a week ago, everything had been different. The cafe was their shared sanctuary, where laughter and passionate discussions about coffee and books created a vibrant atmosphere. But now all of that felt like a distant memory wrapped in layers of tension. It all started during a busy weekend, the type of day when the cafe buzzed with energy and customers lined up for their favorite brews. Mia had been stressed, dealing with the pressure of managing an increasingly demanding crowd. Alex could sense her frustration, but the easy camaraderie that usually linked them had dissipated. That day, he had absently mentioned his ideas for improving the customer experience. Instead of embracing it, Mia snapped. "You don't get it, Alex. I need you to focus on what I've already assigned you," she had exclaimed, her voice tight with nerves and exhaustion. In an instant, the warmth that had infused their friendship evaporated, replaced by a coldness that shocked him. "Why can't we just try something new?" He had fired back, anger bubbling up unexpectedly. The argument escalated, each of them throwing accusations that simply cannot be taken back. Mia's words had stung, slicing through the air with a finality that left no room for conversation. He stormed out, the mouthfeel of bitterness heavy on his tongue. That night, Alex sat awake, replaying their confrontation in his mind. He had never intended for things to spiral so dramatically. Every moment spent in silence felt like slipping deeper into a dark void. How could something so vibrant become so shattered in mere seconds? Days turned into weeks, with each passing moment punctuated by regrets. Alex didn't reach out, his pride held him back. He had convinced himself that apologizing first would only weaken him. The longer he waited, the heavier the silence became. The fridge buzzed, the world outside bustled, but for him everything felt muted. Then one afternoon, as sunlight filtered lazily through the trees outside, his phone vibrated to life. An incoming message. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be Mia? He opened it slowly, almost afraid to see who it was. "Hey Alex, it's Mia, can we talk?" The words danced across the screen, igniting a mix of hope and apprehension within him. He had envisioned this moment countless times, but nothing could prepare him for the onslaught of emotions that surged within. What could she possibly say after everything that had transpired? He typed a quick reply, fingers trembling slightly as he pressed send. "Sure, tomorrow at the cafe." He felt a strange pull in his chest. All at once, excitement and fear collided. Their cafe had once been a safe haven, but could it hold the same warmth after the wildfire of their argument? He took a deep breath and agreed. The next day crawled by, each tick of the clock echoing the tension swirling in the pit of his stomach. Would she even want to see him? Would it be worth confronting all that had been left unsaid? As he approached the cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee wafted through the air, wrapping around him like a time-honored embrace. Yet he felt apprehensive, like a soldier stepping onto an old battlefield. Pushing open the door, the little bell chimed and the atmosphere shifted, heavy with unspoken words. Mia sat at their usual corner table, her fingers nervously wrapping around a steaming cup. She looked up as he entered, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and anxiety. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "Hey," Alex replied, trying to muster the same warmth he would have ordinarily felt. The silence hung between them, a palpable reminder of the tension that had divided them. He could sense her hesitation, the way she fiddled with her coffee cup as if searching for the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot since." "I have too," he admitted, his resolve hardening as he met her gaze. "I shouldn't have let our argument get so out of control." Mia nodded, her eyes clouding with unspent emotions. "I felt overwhelmed and I took it out on you." Hearing her admit her shortcomings eased some of the tension that had gripped Alex. "I get that, the pressure of running a cafe is immense." "I should have listened," Mia said, pain threading through her words. "I pushed you away when I needed your insights the most." They sat there, hearts laid bare, as silent understanding filled the space between them. It was in this moment of vulnerability that the possibility of healing began to emerge. Alex suggested, his voice brimming with cautious optimism. Mia's expression shifted to one of hope, as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders. "I'd really like that." With that, the conversation blossomed, the air around them vibrating with the potential of new beginnings. They discussed their shared vision for the cafe, tossing ideas around like fresh coffee beans. Alex suggested themed nights like poetry readings or open mic sessions to draw in the community. I want the cafe to feel alive again, he said, his enthusiasm bubbling to the surface. Mia's eyes lit up as she listened, a sense of excitement flooding her spirit. Yes, let's bring back the familiar warmth, the essence of why we started this in the first place. I want to embrace that passion again. Time slipped away as they fell into a rhythm, brainstorming, sharing stories, and rekindling the flame of their partnership. Laughter started to weave its way back into their conversation, creating an atmosphere not just of work but of genuine connection. As the evening sun cast long shadows across the cafe, something shifted in the air. They had shifted from conflict to camaraderie, painting a brighter path ahead. Alex felt lighter than he had in weeks, their words weaving together like a comforting tapestry. As they wrapped up their plans, Alex looked at Mia with gratitude. Thank you for reaching out. I've missed us. Mia smiled, relief flooding her features. Me too. I've learned that being a leader doesn't mean doing it all alone. They stood up, ready to take the first steps toward rebuilding not just their cafe, but their friendship. As they walked to the door, the weight of their past arguments lifted. Once they stepped outside, the evening air felt fresh and invigorating. The cafe, once cloaked in the shadows of misunderstanding, now radiated warmth. With newfound purpose, they knew there would still be challenges ahead. But after facing the storm together, they were ready to embrace whatever came next. They had crafted a new beginning, forging a connection built on understanding, respect, and a mutual love for the little cafe that had become a part of their lives. As they walked away, shoulders squared and hearts full, the world seemed a little brighter. There would be coffee to brew, stories to share, and a community to foster, all in a place rooted in friendship. From the silence, they had found clarity, and with clarity came a promise of hope. He waited in silence, the weight of the last few weeks pressing heavily on his chest. Jake sat in his cluttered living room, the ticking clock on the wall echoing like a heartbeat against the stillness. Outside, the world buzzed with the sounds of life, children laughing, cars honking, but inside, it felt as if a dense fog had settled. He had lost something important, and now uncertainty swirled around him like a mist, obscuring the path forward. Just a week ago, things had spiraled out of control at the bookstore where he worked part-time. The owner, Lily, had invited him into her dream, a space filled with books and warmth, a sanctuary for the community. But in one heated moment, everything crashed down. I can't keep doing this, Jake. Lily's voice had been sharp, cutting through the air like glass. Jake had felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger. And I'm not allowed to have ideas. The argument escalated, sharp words exchanged like daggers. It was supposed to be a casual brainstorming session, but it erupted into a full-fledged war of emotion. They had both said things they didn't mean, and before he knew it, Jake was out the door, heart pounding, leaving the bookstore behind. In the days that followed, silence filled the space where laughter and ideas once flourished. Jake had replayed their argument countless times, knowing on regret. He missed the casual camaraderie they shared, but pride kept him from reaching out. What would he even say? Just as he was drowning in doubt, a notification blinked on his phone, pulling him from the abyss of silence. A message from Lily, heart racing, he opened it. Hey Jake, can we talk? His breath caught in his throat, an apology. He hadn't expected this. The flicker of hope mingled with apprehension. Could they mend what had been broken? Taking a breath, he typed back cautiously, sure. Tomorrow at the bookstore. Jake's heart sank and soared all at once. Tomorrow held the potential for reconciliation, but it also threatened to unravel old wounds. The next day would either stitch things back together or rip them apart completely. As he prepared for the meeting, the air felt electric with anticipation and dread. Could they really face each other after everything? He had spent too long waiting in silence, lost in a storm of his own making. He needed to find the courage to step into the light. The following afternoon arrived crisp and clear. The sun cut through the trees, casting intricate shadows on the sidewalk leading to the bookstore. As he walked, every step felt like a vast chasm, each breath filled with uncertainty. Pushing the door open, the familiar chime of the bell filled the air, reverberating through him like a long-lost tune. Inside, the store felt different. The cozy atmosphere he loved now felt laden with tension. Lily was waiting at their usual table, hands wrapped around a steaming cup, her expression contemplative. Hey, she said softly, looking up as he approached. The warmth of her voice contrasted sharply with the cold edge of their last conversation. Hey, Jake replied, forcing the words out. He sat down slowly, searching her face for signs of what was to come. They stared at each other, the silence pressing down heavily. It felt like all the air had been sucked from the room. Then Lily took a deep breath, her shoulders slightly relaxing. I've been thinking a lot since the last time we talked. I need to apologize. Jake felt a wave of relief crash over him. I'm sorry too, I didn't handle things well either. There was a moment of shared understanding, a softening of tension as they both acknowledged their missteps. They were revisiting old wounds, but with a fresh perspective, standing on the precipice of something fragile yet important. But it can't just be about the apology, Lily said, her eyes serious. We need to talk about how we'll move forward. Jake nodded, his heart racing. I want this place to thrive. We both care about it, but we have to communicate better. Lily leaned in, her expression earnest. Let's find a way to make this a true partnership. I don't want my stress to cloud my judgment anymore. The The conversation began to flow more easily, transforming the air around them from heavy to light. As they swapped ideas, Jake felt the old warmth returning, a reminder of why he had loved working there in the first place. They spoke about hosting open mic nights, community book clubs, and introducing local authors. With each exchange, shadows of doubt began to lift, and the quiet tension dissolved into plans that could breathe life back into the bookstore. I remember how we brought in local artists for a gallery night. It transformed the place, Jake said, enthusiasm bubbling within him. Yes, Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Jake couldn't help but grin. They dove deeper into conversation, the laughter returning between them like an old friend. The weight of their past arguments felt lighter, made bearable by the shared vision of renewal. It was as if they were rewriting the narrative of their partnership, turning conflict into collaboration. Just as Jake felt the threads of their bond weaving back together, he noticed a flicker of uncertainty in Lily's expression. She hesitated, fingers tapping the table nervously. She asked, her voice low. "Of course," he replied, a hint of concern creeping into his tone. "I've been feeling pressure not just from the business, but from outside too. I've been considering whether I'm cut out for this." His heart dropped. Wait, what? The thought of losing her, losing their team, sent panic racing through him. "I know it sounds dramatic, but running this place has taken a toll. I don't want to disappoint you or anyone else. There's so much at stake, and some days it feels overwhelming," she confessed, the vulnerability in her voice cutting deep. Jake felt a mixture of disbelief and sadness. "But we just started rebuilding. We can face this together." Lily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, caught between her fears and the hope they had ignited today. "I thought I could manage, but maybe I need to rethink my path. I don't want to hold you back if I'm not fully committed," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. In that moment, vulnerability enveloped them both. Jake realized the stakes were far higher than just a disagreement. They were wrestling with dreams, passion, and the pressures of life that could extinguish that flicker of hope they'd rekindled. "Don't give up yet," he urged, standing firm in his resolve. "This is our cafe, our dream. I believe in us, you are a part of this community, and we can't let the pressures of life crush that." As he spoke, eyes locked with hers, a sense of urgency filled the air. This was a crossroads for both of them. Would they rise together, or would the shadows drag them back into uncertainty? Lily wiped a tear, visibly moved. "I want to believe that, Jake, but what if I fail?" "Then we figure it out together," he said, his voice steady and assured. Partnership means supporting each other through the storms. The room felt charged, their shared vulnerability intertwining with hope as they stood on the brink of a decision that could change their lives. He believed in the bookstore and in the team they could become again. Would she find the strength to believe in it too? As the sun set outside, casting intricate shadows across the floor, Jake felt the winds of change swirling around them. They were at a turning point, one that could lift them to new heights or leave them stranded in a storm. Just then the door swung open and the familiar bell jingled, interrupting their moment. A few customers entered, filling the cafe with life again. The warmth of laughter spilled in, creating a stark contrast against their heavy conversation. Lily turned her gaze toward the door, the fleeting thoughts of their earlier discussion replaced with the present, and for an instant Jake feared she was retreating into her shell once more. The customer at the front of the line caught Jake's attention, but the moment he saw her face, panic flooded through him. It was Emily, a journalist he had dated briefly, her presence a ghost that lingered in the back of his mind, laden with unfinished business and unresolved feelings. She hadn't just swept out of his life, she had vanished in the confusion. Emily called, her voice cheerful but unexpectedly jarring. For a moment, time froze as all eyes fell on him. The laughter, the warmth, the rekindled plans all seemed to hang in the balance. Lily's expression changed, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face as if the burgeoning hope they had built was at risk of collapsing. As he stood there, caught between the past and present, Jake felt everything shift. Would this moment pull them back into the shadows they had fought so hard to escape, or would it forge a new path entirely? The weight of the decision pressed on him, and in that charged silence, the future remained unclear, hanging like a fragile thread ready to snap. Would Jake embrace the challenge and face the intertwining destinies before him, or would he falter under the pressure of everything love, partnership, and dreams threatening to unravel around him?